Okay. Thank you. Right. So I'm going to share my screen. Right. Hello and welcome to the first Knowledge Share of 2024. It's nice to be back. And so the first of this year's Knowledge Shares is sponsored by Qualsy. Qualsy has recently integrated new AI capabilities that automate tedious tasks within asynchronous qualitative research. Assisted moderation, summaries, and their AI-powered design tools make running research communities a breeze. The self-guided platform allows consumer communities to actively contribute across media upload activities, surveys, chat forums, and more. Made for independent researchers seeking an integrated solution to conduct remote qualitative studies with more consumer intimacy and at greater scale, Qualsy delivers. Passionate about powering high-quality insight, Qualsy partners with the ICG to help members leverage their purpose-built platform to win clients and conduct projects more efficiently through the power of AI. Follow the QR code for a link to their research platform buyer's guide. So I'm stopping sharing my screen and I'm going to hand over to Alison, who's very kindly going to talk to us about sobriety and well-being. And just to say, if you've got any questions, do put them in the chat and then we can decide whether to do them there and then or whether we'll have a conversation afterwards. Okay, so I'm just making, Alison, you are co-host already. Yeah, so over to you.
Right, well, let's hope this works without the additional extra thingy bobby. Oh, hooray! Yeah. Not there. We had a bit of a rehearsal this afternoon and got a weird message from Apple, however. Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks for coming along. And to those watching on recording, if you have any thoughts or contributions or comments that you think could be incorporated into any takeaway that we produce out of this, please just email me, alison@counterpointuk.com. That would be fab. Yeah, so what we're going to cover today, I'm going to start with my story. I've been sober for about a year and a half now. And loving it and just wanting to share the joy, really. And when Lucy mentioned the Wellbeing Initiative, we talked a bit about how this is quite a good topic to kick it off. A lot of the topics, oh no, my speaking voice is too quiet, Lynn.
Don't worry. I know, don't worry about it.
Ignore that bit at the bottom. And Liz is in the waiting room, I think.
Yeah, I've let her in.
Lovely. And we just thought it was a good place to start because a lot of the techniques that work for sobriety actually work for other kinds of issues. And thought good place to start. So we're going to go through my story, then looking at big picture type stuff that is applicable for across the board, some tactics and tips, given that we are nearly halfway through January. So anybody who's watching this because they know somebody or they're doing dry January themselves, hopefully can pick up a few useful hints that way. And then because this is the ICG, we thought it would be good to have just a couple of points about well-being and our group, our micro businesses and freelancers. So I'm going to start telling you a bit about my story, if I can get this to work. It is not, oh, there we go. Here. Now, I don't know if any of you can see properly, the top left-hand corner is kind of a good representation of my childhood. In fact, I may be in that picture with my hat and my Sunday best on. Very religious kind of upbringing. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. So strictly no alcohol. But similarly, sugar is really good for you because most of the congregation and certainly all the eldership were diabetic and ended up with horrid complications that I'm not sure how the Holy Spirit dealt with that, but hey ho. And interestingly, Christmas lunch was the exception for alcohol. And because we didn't have any wine or anything through the year, Christmas lunch, my mum and dad would have a bottle of wine, and my aunt and uncle that used to visit for lunch would also have a bottle of wine. So everybody got a bit stocious on Christmas Day, and then there would be nothing for a year. So it wasn't the kind of classic French introduction to wine drinking en famille. I went to church 5 times on a Sunday, and you know, it really was quite a strict, controlled, misogynist, it must be said, kind of an upbringing. But at least it gave me a superpower. I used, one of the 5 church meetings on a Sunday was what they used to call the open air outreach, and I got hauled along from the age of about 7 or 8 in my Sunday best to sing and preach outdoors in my community. And if you can learn to live with that, it's a superpower that you really, nothing could be more embarrassing than that. So as I grew up, nothing embarrassed me. Joined the Christian Union at university. Husband was in a Christian rock band. It was Rock and Roll Man. So generally, I grew up with the idea that drink was bad and people that drank were alcoholics, and it was a bit of an all or nothing. So it was interesting when I then moved into work. I first of all was in academia, and then I had to move down to London and got a job at NOP. And suddenly the Peacock, the Pillars of Hercules, drink and smoke was very much part of the way of life. I even remember writing debriefs in a pub. I mean, how crazy is that? However, that's where it seemed to be everywhere. Lunch, after work, dinners, weekends. It really was a bit of a social glue. And it was for celebrations, for near misses, proposals that didn't land, commiserations, you name it. So gradually I ditched the spirituality and embraced the big city in all its Sodom and Gomorrah-ness. Actually, I did have some lovely lunches. I had some great times. London in the 80s and early 90s was quite something. But however, when I hit 30, I thought, this is ridiculous. I have to do something about this. So I'm so old that I actually attended a seminar in Alan Carr's house. I don't know if you know him, the easy way to stop smoking, to stop drinking, to do all of that. And I managed to stop smoking quite easily. But a couple of things he said really helped me. And it was interesting when it came to ditching the booze that those weren't messages that are given out typically. So what he said was, you might experience cravings for cigarettes, but remember why you came here and don't doubt your decision. And I think that was a great piece of advice to be giving, that when you made the decision to stop smoking, you were in a calm, reasoned place. Just trust yourself, trust the self that made those decisions. There's quite a bit of in the chat. Can you hear me all right, Lynn?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I'm just putting comments in myself. Sorry.
I'm talking to the abyss here.
Yeah, no, we're all on mute. That's why. But
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's a while since I've done a Zoom presentation. And then the second thing he said that really rang true was, don't concentrate on counting days and stuff like that. Just see yourself as a non-smoker, you know, own that identity, live in that identity. And that made a heck of a lot of sense, because that is a really positive, you know, forward-looking way to look at it. And I think one of the issues with dry January, sober October, is it's particularly dry January because it's cold, it's wet, it's snowing, it's horrible. And so many of us are white knuckling it through the month, just dying for the 31st of January. Whereas if we could refocus on what the positives are and what we're gaining, and help, you know, really step into that identity of I don't drink, I don't smoke. What do you do, as Adam Ant once said? Step in it and own it. And the final thing he actually said that I thought was brilliant, he said, in the early days, don't read scare stories about the nature of your lungs. And he was very anti the kind of pictures of rotting lungs on cigarette packets, because he said it'll scare the bejesus out of you. And the first thing you do when you feel the fear is you light a fag and you pour a glass of wine. But interestingly, at that time about the cigarettes, I got loads and loads of comments and praise from friends and family. Well, those that had admitted I smoked to, actually. Given my background, there was a whole tranche of people that never knew I smoked. And I got lots of requests for information about how I'd done it. Interestingly, it's not always the same with stopping drinking. There's seemingly this actual thing called sober shaming. And I'd come across it, but not under that name, where people say, "Oh, go on, just have one. You know, you're not an alcoholic. You just have one." And I'll talk about that later. But I hadn't come across that, and it doesn't happen with smoking. But interestingly, I also found it fairly easy to cut out alcohol for a while. And through my 30s and 40s, I'd do the dry January, have a break in the summer, do sober October. And I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't very good at staying stopped. And I think part of it was it's so much around us, that kind of, as I said, social glue, the reason, there's always a reason for wine o'clock. Well, by my 50s, I was getting a bit fed up with all of this, and I'd started running again, which was interesting. I could neck a bottle of wine the night before and get out running in my 30s, early 30s, late 20s, but in your 50s, nature says, "Oh, you think so?" And I thought, well, if it's having that kind of impact on my on running, you know, even with 1 or 2 glasses, what is it doing to my body? However, it just was an internal dialogue that went on. And then came 2020 in March, lockdown arrived. And by that point, my husband had passed away. And I was determined not to be the sad and lonely widow alone at home with a bottle of red wine for company. So I stopped. And I just stopped. I thought, I'm not being that woman. And interestingly, I thought in my head, right, that's sorted. Don't need to worry about alcohol now. Boom, job done. However, as soon as everything opened up again, I started. Sorry, I started again. After, you know, oh, it's just the one, on you go. Oh, it's a celebration. It was the anniversary of my husband's birthday, or, you know, anything like that. And, oh, come on, let's raise a glass. And so it became a regular thing again. And one of the things about my upbringing being so religious and spiritual was that when I'd moved to London and gone into market research, excuse the MRS reference, but I really had embraced the kind of evidence-based and ditched all of that kind of spiritual side of life, particularly stuff that I would have seen as wacky spirituality, you know, kind of woo-woo stuff, self-help books, etc., etc. However, in my late 50s, early 60s, I thought, this is crazy. I've got to start, you know, looking at how to make, how, you know, what tools are there out there that I can use and stop being so prejudiced. And I finally, so I joined actually an online group. I found an online group called the Sober Club. It's run by one of, oh, what do you call him in the afternoon? Steve Wright in the afternoon, one of his posse. She's a musician, a journalist, presenter, and holistic well-being kind of a guru. So not the kind of person I thought I would find myself at the feet of, but actually she calls a spade, and she is immensely practical, and her tribe was just full of great advice and very, very easily put into practice. So I lurked for quite a while in that community, and then October 22, I stopped. I quit for Sober October, and I stayed stopped. So in terms of what did I do? Well, here's some things. I hope you enjoy the pictures. Lucy and I had a bit of a contretemps with Getty a few years back. So nowadays I use my own photographs to avoid any horrid emails coming from Getty. So in terms of the big picture, well, the first thing from my point of view was just be open, be open to what's out there and read and pick up what you can and adapt it to your own language and your own framework and make it work for you. You can pick up the best tips in the most unlikely places. And I really learned a lot when I ditched the kind of academic evidence kind of superiority complex. There's lots of the woo-woo end of things that I find challenging, like my vibrations and stuff like that. But, wherever you get the advice, the tips, the guidance, go there. There's a heck of a lot of brilliant stuff out there. Second thing I did was something that we shouldn't have to be reminded of, but my goodness, how many of us just head on willy-nilly without actually checking what's our nutrition like. Are we getting enough protein? Is half our plate plant-based? Are we getting 3 good meals a day? Are we hydrating properly as a jogger? I sort of had a bit of awareness of that, but 2 to 2.5 litres, pay attention to your hydration. Sleep, there's loads of brilliant apps around sleep. Even your Apple Watch has got a sleep function that shuts all your social media down 45 minutes, I think it is, before you've told it when you want to go to sleep. Move, get out there in nature. It's just amazing what it does for mood. Since I ditched the booze, I've taken up coastal rowing, which is the maddest sport anybody could ever invent. You actually carry your boat out the clubhouse into the sea. But when you're out there and you're not sinking, it's just the best feeling in the world. And then the final thing to be really, really high on your priority list is to connect. The ICG is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but connect with others who've got your interests, connect with others who are in your area. Certainly since lockdown and since being widowed, it's highlighted just how important human contact is. So, even things like go for a massage where you actually touch another human body. A big thing is at one point you made a decision to stop drinking or stop sugar or do something, and just write down or remember who you were, what you were thinking, why you decided to do it. And as the late, great Alan Carr said, don't doubt your decision. When it comes to the wobble, just trust your earlier, sane, clear self and the decision that it made. The next thing I'd say is choose language really carefully. We're not giving up anything. It's like, he said, you're a non-smoker. You step in and own that identity and be that person. It just pulls you down to think that you're depriving yourself of something. Your body, your mind, your brain hears you when you use that language. So just be really careful about how you frame it. Plan how you're going to handle the trigger points. Of course, there's going to be trigger points, and you need at least 90 seconds to get you back so that you're not reacting. You're actually, sort of dealing with something, and that can be anything from a time of day. So those references to wine o'clock, or it could even be being offered biscuits, a glass of wine, a lovely piece of cake. Figure out what you're going to do and plan so that it's a bit more second nature when it comes along. And then I've got a colleague who's a lovely strengths-based coach. It's quite hard to say that. And her advice is always, in a time like this, really lean into your strengths you know, sort of take a moment to reassess what is it you love, what are you good at, and are you using that as well as you could. It's a time and a place to really push yourself forward in areas where maybe you've been too busy doing great things, no doubt, but you know, review and retrench. In terms of tactical tips, this is more Loch Lomond. That's the Maid of the Loch down there. Think forward and prepare really helped me. So tell hosts if you're going to visit somebody that you're not drinking. You don't have to tell them why. You can make it up if you want. Get your fridge, your cupboards well stocked with great stuff. There are brilliant no and low alcohol alternatives now. You can join in the fun. Half the time, you know, you think you actually get a buzz just out of the social context, out of the kind of occasion. Call venues and check. This is a huge bugbear of mine that the alcohol-free, low and no alcohol alternatives are so poor, especially in restaurants and especially wines. Spirits, some places will have seedlip now, and there are lots of great pubs, especially in Sussex where I live, that do versions of their artisan beers. So Only with Love and is one that's local to us. It does a couple of alcohol-free versions. Take those with you, invest in lovely coolers so that you arrive with ice cold wine and beer, because there's nothing better, nothing worse than warm beer or wine. And learn to travel well. So think luxury picnic gear, and invest in that, and it will make life a lot easier. And remember, once your glass is full, nobody cares what's in it. So if you can avoid having any discussion around filling your glass, either at the bar or, you know, if you're at a party or something, when you're refilling your glass, nobody cares once your glass is full. In fact, I took 2 or 3 bottles of fizz to friends recently, and the other drinking guests were happily munching their way through my alcohol-free fizz, which was hilarious, not noticing at all. Janie Lee Grace, who runs the Sober Club, always says, and I love this, keep the ritual, change the ingredients. You don't have to change what you've been doing, just change the ingredients. Research, experiment, and find what alcohol-free drinks work for you. And if you get a craving, well, you are not your thoughts. It took me a while to work it out, and the psychologists amongst you probably think this is the daftest thing that I hadn't really sort of got my head around properly. But in that gap between your initial reaction to something and in the 90 seconds that you give yourself, you can isolate the thought from actually what you want to do about it. And whatever you do in that 90 seconds is up to you, you know, whatever works for you. If you're a Boris fan, you can sing Happy Birthday twice. But just work out what you are going to do to fill that. And then I enjoy an argument with my thought every now and then when the wine witch or however you characterize that voice whenever they come to visit. A colleague of mine who's a brilliant mental health nurse who's a sober coach, what he did was he made a deal with himself that he'd have an alcohol-free drink first, and then if he still wanted it, he'd said to himself, I'll have the alcohol then, and he never did. And then the final thing is to make and use a list of alternative rewards and treats. Alcohol is such a default. Put a bit of work into what you really would like if you want to celebrate something or you know, say well done to yourself, and there's some lovely things you can put on that list. Just looking at the time, I better just zip through these. Some fellow sober coaches have said, watch the sober shamers, those that say, oh, you can just have one. And some people don't realize they're doing it, and it says more about their relationship with alcohol than them trying to be cruel to somebody who's stopped drinking. But as a rule of thumb, you know, call it out and say, look, would you say that to somebody who'd stopped smoking? A lot of people say journals worked for them. They didn't work for me, but there's Julia Cameron's The Artist Way. A lot of people swear by that. Talked a bit about leaning into your strengths. It's amazing how many people who ditch the booze have got time and bandwidth to do lovely things that they'd forgotten they loved doing. And then have a good look at, I know the nudge theorists amongst you will enjoy looking at the good company you're in if you quit the booze. The YouGov survey showing that there's almost 40% of 18 to 25-year-olds don't drink, number of celebrities, younger generations, other friends. And just please look after yourself. If you're ditching the booze, your body is expecting its nightly or bi-weekly dose of booze, and it's preparing for it. So early days, there is a lot of anxiety, maybe disturbed sleep, etc. As your body gets confused about not having the getting out of its routine. But stick with it and make sure nutrition above all that you're looking after. And I must say, having opened my mind to finding a toolkit from you know, wherever I can find it, there's lots out there that will work for different people in different ways. These are some of the things that come up: talking therapies, coaching. I always fancied boot camps or adventure. I'd love to do a boot camp at some point, but that could be the Presbyterian Scot in me, I don't know. Breath work, I find the breathing exercises, that's what really helped me with the 90 seconds gap until I got the real me back. and so it gives me breath to argue with the wine witch. And then finally, a few tips from various colleagues. Just reminders: if you do work from home, remember to set your boundaries, put your office in a box, get it out the way, get it out of sight. Remember to get out. I had some great advice about walk to work. Actually walk, get out, put your jacket on and walk the distance that you would have before lockdown, before you started working from home. Monday morning, get out somewhere, have a coffee and in a coffee shop somewhere nice, and have a planning meeting with yourself or with your colleague. And the same with a Friday review. Just find some good local spaces to work from. Sometimes you need to get out of your home if you're working from home. And remember, co-working spaces also offer a community, not just a place to be. Check out Eventbrite. I was quite surprised by what's on there. Hook into whatever local networks you can and go to events and or arrange your own. And of course, ask the e-group anything. It never ceases to amaze me how generous the e-group are with their time and their advice. They're a brilliant bunch. So just finally, okay, it was not long after my husband died, and I was redoing the kitchen, and I saw this on an app on my phone. I thought, good grief, that's a good price. That's an amazing bargain. However, sometimes if you look at something from a different perspective, that's why it was a bargain, because it was a kid's play kitchen. And this is me doing my coastal rowing. That boat we actually pick up and put in the sea. That's a very calm sea. And getting out of your comfort zone is just something that like a boot camp, it works for me. And it's got the social element, it's got the exercise. And at the minute, it's seemingly covered in snow. But that was summer. So that's me, Lynn. Shall I stop sharing?
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was just fascinating. And I didn't realize you got snow, although I remember I did hear it had snowed in Worthing, so I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, from my own point of view, I'm not a drinker. I always say I'd rather eat my calories, but I can see all that. But I've had a food problem my whole life, and you've really given me something to think about. So if you'd all like to, anybody got any questions or comments they'd like to make? There's nothing in the chat, certainly. Yes, Lucy, and then Lindsay.
Oh, so interesting. But my question is about what point do you, I assume people need to genuinely want to give it up. I know that sounds mad, but a lot of people say, I want to give up the booze, I want to give up the fags, food, you know, sugar, whatever, but they don't really want to because it gives them something, or they think it gives them something. So I guess my question is, at what point, I guess when you know, don't you? But you have to come, it's an observation, you have to come to that point of thinking, right, enough, like you went through. And I think it's probably quite hard to do it if you're not ready.
Yeah, I mean, I also think, I mean, it's interesting, what are they called? The 12 steps people, Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a kind of really hard kind of line about alcohol, low and no alcohol alternatives and things like that. And you know, you fall off the wagon, you break it. But you know, for me, it was a slightly different experience. It was becoming aware that I was getting fed up stopping, you know. It was really just kind of, and it was a process. And I see it in other people as well with things like eating or sugar or you know, that you can sit and have conversations with people along the lines of, you know, what would help you decide that you could do it now, and help them get their toolkit together. And that makes it helps fuel their intention, which I think helps a lot. But if somebody isn't ready, then you know there's not anything. It's a decision you make.
Yeah, but they can be nudged, you're saying, along.
I think so. Yeah. If only we still had the COI. They were the experts in that, but hey ho.
And Lindsay, you were next, I think.
Yeah, no, merely a couple of observations really, but thank you for your honesty and openness about your journey. Actually, I mean, I've actually since I met my other half, he encouraged me to stop drinking for a month because he did the same just for health reasons. We're both avid runners, and so we do that every year. Dry January I've never done, but I just wanted to share quite an interesting concept I read in a running sort of blog email that we get every so often. They talked about damp January. I mean, my birthday's in January, so I find it extremely hard to think, right, I'm going to do dry January. And I think, you know, the concept of dry is very much the language of sort of penance and sin, and you know, it's like denial. Whereas I found damp was actually quite a nice sort of slightly humorous concept and made me feel more positive about, I will drink when it's my birthday. We went to an 80th birthday party at the weekend, so it was okay to drink, and I felt a lot more positive about it. And then I've happily not had a drink since, and I won't until my birthday. So I thought that was really nice. The thing that I have been trying to do is reduce sugar, again, just for health reasons, because we're runners, which I find really difficult. And you know, to your point about kind of your body craves, and I found I was quite successful for a few months last year, and my body eventually got really used to the absence of sugar, particularly bad at night. I always used to have, you know, a few squares of chocolate after my meal. But I've, to your point about reward or replacement, I've replaced it with some fruit or some dried fruit. So there's, you know, I don't particularly worry about natural sweetness. It's more the artificial sweetness. So
yeah,
I think it's trying to kid your body that you've got some kind of sweetness when it's actually not the artificial sweetness that you're trying to avoid. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to have some of those tactics reinforced that I've tried to employ.
Brilliant. There's a wonderful nutritionist. She's slightly mad, but she's brilliant. It's in the, I've started putting together a list of resources. Dominic Ludwig, and she's really worth following on Instagram. And she is absolutely brilliant with sweet substitutes. And her stuff is so delicious. Green matcha balls, healthy marathon bar substitutes, and they're just delicious and brilliant. She uses medjool dates a lot, and cacao 70 or 80%. You know, and she's just brought out an ebook with sweets. Sweet things, desserts, and little snacks, and they're the right size as well. It's not like a big blooming lump of bread and butter pudding with custard, you know. I would really recommend following her on her Instagram, with the proviso she is slightly nuts, but in a really enthusiastic way.
Yeah, right, thank you. Oh, and I totally get what you said about running, because as I say, you know, one of the days when you used to neck a shed load of booze and then go and do a race the next day, cannot do anymore.
I could barely hobble.
Well, I can't run, but I can't blame the booze for it. It's just me. I've always hated exercise, and it doesn't get any better.
Oh, well, like coastal rowing is just brilliant, Lynn. Been out there.
Well, yeah,
and
that sounds good. Yeah.
doing it.
Unfortunately,
I think
we
it's
have a lack of tea in Nottingham.
well, it was the lovely sailor who was from the Midlands. Ellen, what's her name?
Oh,
Wasn't she
yeah.
from Derbyshire or something, where there's
Somewhere like that. Yeah.
no water. She was this world-class sailor.
Yeah, we have a lot of water around here at the moment. We don't want it, or we didn't want it. Any other comments or thoughts that you'd like to share? Yes, I'd like to thank Alison as well for being so open and honest. Debbie, was that you waving? Yeah.
My internet went down, so I actually missed the beginning of the talk, which is a real shame.
It'll be on the website. You can catch it up.
But it's interesting, because I just you know, several times I've tried to not drink, because it's just habitual. You know, if I've got friends coming round and they're not happy about something, oh, Debbie, let's have a wine. You know, if I haven't got much work on, I'm just like binge watching TV and think, okay, you know, I'll have a bottle of wine. And when I did try and stop, after a few days, I got a real sweet craving, and I'm not a sweet person. But, you know, I was eating bags of sweets, and I'm thinking, I don't eat bags of sweets normally. You know, I'm a cheese and crackers type person. And I didn't understand, why have I got this sweet craving when I don't normally have it when I'm trying to, you know, give up, you know, drinking wine. But yeah, I just find it so difficult to completely. I did stop a few years ago. And that's just because I was on a Slimming World venture, and I just stopped for about 6 months or so. And then I don't know when I went, you know, why I went back to it. So it's just triggers. It's different triggers all the time. You know, it's happy, sad, stressed. It's so difficult to like pinpoint one particular trigger.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, if you are used to having even quite an occasional drink, your body is producing stuff to deal with it beforehand, and it's still producing that, and so a lot of the kind of confusion that you're causing it is because you're not drinking. And I guess they recommend quite a lot of food supplements in the early days, like Brazil nuts. Magnesium, seemingly particularly for women, is really important. And the sugar rush is really common, seemingly. And it's partly psychological, that you need a treat, you know. Partly, you know, you should have a treat. You know, ditching the booze is something to celebrate. And you know, line yourself up some nice treats to do that. And just the act of looking after yourself, well, I found helped, and others have found that too. But vitamin B 6 Brazil nuts for the serotonin, is it called? A day.
Selenium.
That's it, thank you. Similarly, you can get it as a supplement, but it tastes absolutely foul. Magnesium is really important, and the protein with every meal is incredibly important. And just, you know, being kind to yourself, because you are doing something.
It's really interesting because I can't remember when I started, probably October time, and I think it was something I'd seen on Instagram. Again, it's a nutritionist called Petronella Ravenshire. She's got a book out, well, second edition now, called HBD, which is Human Being Diet. She's a nutritionist. She's now moved over to Florida to try and hit the American market. But her story goes back, you know, from when her son was ill many years ago. She's done lots of different courses herself. She's got a really strong following, but her mantra really is protein and vegetables 3 times a day, leaving a 5-hour window, and just drink 2.5 to 3 litres, depending on body weight. So I started that back in October. It's quite strict for a couple of days, just vegetables, and then next sort of 14 days, I think it is, not using anything to cook with in terms of olive oil or anything like that. But once you get out of that, I think it's up to 3 months where you're just literally having protein, vegetables, plenty of water, apple cider vinegar in water to one, to help the sugar cravings, but also to help any alcohol cravings as well. So that was really useful. I mean, I like vinegary things, you know, and it did help putting apple cider vinegar in some water. And then sort of over Christmas, you know, things got in the way. So I'm trying to get back into that again. But because it's restrictive in terms of trying to keep people away from sweet things, I do get a real sweet craving in the evening because I've deprived myself of everything during the day. But that's a lot of nuts as well, particularly walnuts, fruits. Actually, not so much fruit. You can have an apple a day, but she tries to talk about staying away from fruits and have vegetables as your carbohydrates. But that's really interesting what she does. And a lot of it to begin with is not to do too much cardio exercise, because that puts stress on your body. But a lot of her book is scientifically based. So there's lots of papers to back all her thoughts. So I was trying that because, again, that would help stay away from alcohol. So I just have to see how that goes this month, and really focus on nutrition, protein, as you were saying, protein, vegetables, a good mix of everything all the time, to help your microbes in your guts, because a lot of it's gut related. And a lot of the problems, I mean, although people do lose weight on this program, a lot of people improve their health. So inflammatory problems, I've got a problem with something called polymyalgia rheumatica, which hit me last April, I think it was. It was only my osteopath I hadn't seen for a back. Realised that my muscle problems were bilateral, just because of my age. And she said, go and see your GP about this. But that was quite chronic pain as well, and lack of movement. And that put me in a really bad mood. So I just turned to wine. So it's just like, there's always something in the way. There is always something. But in my mind, it's just I've got to get back into healthy nutrition now, and part of that is not to drink.
The apple cider vinegar before the meal, isn't it? You have it. That I find that helped. And there's the Zoe program. That's got
I was just going to mention that.
It's got loads of really, really good free stuff. And if you want to do it super pucker, you can get the kit, which you have to eat dry cupcakes, and it analyzes and send them your poo, and it helps them identify what it's a personalized kind of program, but it's based on a lot of the same kind of principles. And there was a brilliant Michael Mosley had a great series on last week on Radio 4, Just One Long Thing, that went through things like sleep hygiene and what's Dr. Chatterjee on happiness, and cold water therapy. There was a whole load on last week to sort of kickstart dry January, or just New Year's resolutions. And it was, I thought a lot of it was just incredibly helpful, and how to age well as well, which I kind of half approve of.
He was on TV this morning with his wife, and that's what they were talking about. They were talking about sleep hygiene and how to age well. So he's obviously doing I think it might be 5 shows he's got coming up. That's why I'm noting it. But yeah, I mean, I started cold water sea swimming during COVID because I was a swimmer, but the swimming pools were closed, and I live, well, in the car 5 minutes from the beach. I'm in Hampshire, and I joined up with a group of women, and it's huge. It's huge on the south coast here. At the moment I only go Saturday mornings, but we do it right through winter as well. In the winter it's only like 5-10 minutes in the sea because it's so cold. It's like 9 degrees at the moment. But that is brilliant. I hate doing it. I hate the thought of doing it. But when I get there and it's a group of us that go, and if that group wasn't there, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it on my own.
Are you Bluetooth?
say.
Because there's lots of Bluetooths that do it around the country. I think it's such a brilliant name.
I think there's a group down here called the Shark Shacks, I think they're called. And then there's another big group. Again, people got together during COVID with lots of different issues. Some of them don't swim. Some of them just go there to have watch the others and have a coffee. But yeah, I mean, our little group make you get in. Fortunately, one of the girls who swims with us is a sports scientist in Portsmouth Uni. So she does a lot on cold water swimming. She does a lot of lectures, and she's very good at making sure we get out the water in time. Especially now, to make sure that we've got enough time to get because our fingers, everything keeps cooling down afterwards when you get out. So you have to make sure that you're out and you can actually open the fob on your car to actually get dressed, and then all about how to warm up afterwards without sort of causing problems to your body. So it's fascinating talking to her about it, but I should really do it more often during the week. But it's psychologically. Do it on my own. It's dangerous to do on your own anyway, because
Oh yes, definitely. Liz, did you want to say something?
Well, all I was going to share was I have a stage where I need to go back to Weight Watchers again, because I'm diabetic and my weight has crept up, and that is not good because that means I have to take more insulin. But then Christmas really is, really it puts the kibosh and everything. But what she's not with Weight Watchers any longer, sadly, but my old coach used to describe alcohol as liquid lard.
Oh, that would have to put you off, wouldn't it?
Which
Not
is
glamorous.
It's not glamorous, and but it's actually very true. You're drinking all those empty calories.
Yeah.
But I think one of the other things I learned by joining Weight Watchers, and I did get a lot of weight off, and I've got to get it back down again, but it's actually having a group that can support you and is understanding of what's going on and appreciates the challenges you've got. And that is a very, very, very important. It certainly helped me. I had to get off an awful lot of weight. And when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, I was really skinny. And then going on to insulin, my weight went up and up and up. Now I can only blame me. I can only blame me for not being disciplined and eating and drinking all the things I shouldn't do. So I've cut the alcohol now. There's still an awful lot of cake and sugar in the house. So that's all got to go. And it's about, and actually, as you were saying just now, fruit is certainly for a diabetic, a certain amount of fruit's okay, but not very much. And one of the worst things I did before I was diagnosed was I bought myself a smoothie maker, which is basically I was pouring liquid poison into my body and just accelerating what was going on before I was diagnosed. And I got very ill before I was diagnosed without realizing what was going on with my body. So it's about self-awareness, but actually having some sort of group that can support you, I think, is very important as well. It's very hard to do these things on your own.
Yeah. And also to hold you accountable, that
yes.
It's interesting. One of my colleagues, he felt his wife didn't feel he had a problem, but he had a garage in the fridge, a fridge in the garage. So he phoned a friend and he said I had to tell somebody, you know, and so he phoned this friend and updated them on how he was doing every week, which, you know, and the Sober Club online group I find brilliant. You know, they're real cheerleaders for you, and kind of, you can throw at anything. You know, people regularly say, I've got a wedding coming up and this is going to happen, or this is my first girls' weekend away and we're all drinkers, and just loads of really good advice and support gets showered on everybody. And then when they come back, it's loads of praise, and you know, just lots of really practical suggestions and empathy. I completely agree, Liz. Yeah.
The other thing is, I think you're talking about the difficulty in finding a decent zero. I tend to avoid zero alcohol things because it sort of defeats the point, really. My daughter doesn't drink at all, never has, doesn't like alcohol. And she is the queen of finding wonderful non-alcoholic cocktails and mocktails. And there are some places do some absolutely amazing mocktails, which probably aren't very good for me, so I always, if I do them, I go for ones which are mostly soda water with not too much fruit in, because of the smoothie problem. But there are some amazing mocktails out there. I always remember.
Sorry, can you go?
No, I was just going to say there was one that she found in, I think, in the refinery in South Bank, and it was a blackberry, and it was just the most amazing drink.
Some of the coffee martinis are just beautiful, and if you're ever in Covent Garden, there's a place called the Soda Club, Club Soda, and it's alcohol-free, off license and bar, and it's just absolutely wonderful. Go in there and taste things. There's a brilliant sparkling called Naughty, Noughty, which has got the bubbles are lovely and small, like proper champagne. They do cocktails that are not fruit juice based, which is great. I like kombucha. It's up to 0.5%. It's because it's fermented, and it, you know, you get some really lovely, it's fermented tea, really. And it's a lovely alternative. I did try and make it, but I was away too long and it all went horribly wrong. So I must have another go, but kombucha is lovely. I do enjoy a good kombucha. It's just hard if you don't like fruit juices, or if you can't have them because you're, you know, diabetic, then they need to try harder with all of the low and no alcohol alternatives, I think, in pubs and restaurants, and because it's lovely having something nice in a glass when you're out for a meal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to say, Alison, because I mean, for me, I wouldn't drink the low alcohol or no alcohol, because I mean, one, I just think the price is ridiculous. You know, if you're trying to encourage people to drink low alcohol or no alcohol, you know, bring the price down and make people, you know. But the did it not make you want to then have a drink? Because for me, I'd much rather have water, sparkling water, even some apple cider vinegar in sparkling water is actually quite nice.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. There's a Mother Root is a switchel, is it you call it, that you can have with you have that with sparkling mineral water, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's gingery. I love ginger stuff. But there are good alcohol and low alcohol, alcohol-free and low alcohol alternatives, and I enjoy a lovely glass with something nice in it.
Yeah, I think there's do you know there was I can't remember what they're called now. It's like not a syrup based. I can't remember the brand name of it, but that's got a ginger and something in it, and I have a little bit of that in sparkling water, and that ginger kick, you know, really does stave off sweet cravings or anything. Yeah, it is a little bit about, you know, trying to try different things out, which will just stave off the yearning for alcohol.
Yeah, and just the nudge element of it is hilarious. I was doing groups up in in Birmingham, and I finished the groups at 9 and thought, I don't want to go to the pub and drink awful alternatives. There's I'm a member of the gym and you can use their gyms anywhere. So I went down to the gym and thought I'll get some ergometer practice in. And it was me and absolutely gorgeous young people. And I was saying to them, it's a Friday night. How come you're not, out on the town? And they were, well, we're Muslims. We're not, we don't drink.
Oh,
I thought, I like this. I'll be amongst with the cool kids. The old woman and the cool kids.
Well, I think we've overrun our time, so I'd like to say a huge thanks to Alison for a very stimulating presentation and discussion. Maybe what we need is an ICG support group, off-topic support group. Are you listening, Lucy? And I'll be signing up for the food side of it. So thank you very much. Have a lovely evening. And here's to February for the next knowledge share. Thanks again, Alison.
Everyone.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
thank you.
Bye.